Hashem Hashem. Welcome back to the Listen Nissim show. Today we have Yishai with us. Thanks so much for joining.
Hi, perfect. It's a great day in Yerushalayim. Wow, right during the Yamim Noraim, and wow, it's a real pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thanks for being here. So we're going to start first with a little bit about your background and your journey, and then we'll move on to your mission.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, where do you want me to begin?
As far back as possible would be good.
As far back as
you're
possible.
Comfortable with.
Yeah, no. All questions are open. So,
Your grandparents, your great grandparents, even.
I was born in New Delhi in India, the capital city. 30 years ago, basically. It was pretty much a middle class, family in India, and really had no idea about Jews. There was no exposure, no mention of Jewish people while I was there. So growing up till about age 9, I was in, I was in the different neighborhoods in the capital city. Age 9, my dad got a job in Saudi Arabia, Al Jubail, in the oil and gas industry. He used to work in it before also, and so in 2003, I think about 2003 or so, we went over, to Saudi Arabia, and over there, funny enough, since I'm exposed to more cultures, that's a place where I haven't grown up. I started to explore. I was a very curious person as a kid, and loved to read a lot. One of the things my dad did was get a whole library full of books, and I used to read everything that possibly anything and everything that you can think about. I was very, very curious about world cultures, history, different things that happen in different parts of the world, and always for some reason, I mean, this is serious yet dishmaya, as much as I can call it. I was very much attracted to the Jewish people. There were many things. First of all, I remember I had this book of world religions. It was a book published in India that had that had all these religions that were mentioned, and then I saw that the lowest one was Judaism, and I was like very curious. Oh, that's very interesting. That's a very small religion I've never heard about. And there were cues like this. Then I remember very clearly reading about the Shoah, reading about the Holocaust, and I was very emotional about it. I cried over it as a child, maybe about 11, 12 years old. And even around me, I was surrounded by a lot of, I wouldn't want to call friends, but people I would, we'd play soccer together, but mostly get into fights with the Arab kids. There was a lot of, how do I say it? It was Indian people were sort of seen as, they come to these Gulf countries as workers, but there's a lot of racism, a lot of backlash. Even if, let's say, my dad, I mean, he was working in a very good position, in a very good company, but it's almost like the people from Arab countries expect us to be at a lower status of society. Anyways, that's just a reality. Everybody knows about it today, and I would always get asked. It's funny, and I have no idea why. Whether I hated the Jews or not, and it was a question that really intrigued me. Why is he asking me this question? And one of these days, when he asked me, I went back home. I mean, and obviously. I wanted to answer Israel. I mean, after seeing how the Arabs are and everything, it made sense to me logically that that's the side that I want to pick. And I went home to my dad. I'm like, Dad, Ali, the guy's name, Lebanese kid, he was asking me whether I, support the Palestinians or Israel, and I told him Israel. I want it to be the case, and I'm proud to be supporting. And my dad was like, "Wait, you're in an Arab country. Don't say that. Don't get me kicked out." So that's how it was. That's how it sort of began. Those were the early sparks of, if you want to call it, wanting to be part of the Jewish nation. And I would go around, different places in the place where I was living, and I would inscribe the Star of David and write the words Jews. It was just, I don't know, it was just all kinds of all kinds of things that can get you into trouble. And even in my class, I think in grade 5 and grade 6, I told people one day I'm going to convert to Judaism. Thankfully, all the expats go to their own community schools, so I didn't have any Arab classmates. I had a lot of Indian Muslim classmates for sure, and they were like always telling me, "Oh, they're the worst people. You don't want to be part of them." The Christian kids would say, "Oh, they killed Yoshke." The Muslim kids would say, "Oh, they killed all the prophets." It was like, it was weird, but for some reason I had this sense of purpose that all of them are wrong and I'm right. I mean, I was always the type of person, if I have an opinion, no matter what happens, I would stick to it. And that's how it began, really. You have any other questions? Any?
That's really beautiful introduction. It's really beautiful
Yeah.
introduction, I said. I guess we can move on to the transition period.
Yeah, so between that period, the initial, let's say you could call the initial fiery period, and when I first met Jewish people was about maybe 5-6 years. So we moved back and forth between India and the Middle East. So my dad switched jobs to Doha, Qatar. I was actually in Doha during the Mumbai attacks and during the first Gaza war, seeing things and seeing how the propaganda was being used against Israel, and that impacted me quite a lot. I was also, it was funny enough, for some reason I had a friend in grade 8th, and we both, I think one day, were singing, I remember clearly we were singing the Hatikva in our Arabic class. So yeah, that is a check mark on my I don't know if many people get to do that. But yeah, it was just like there's a lot of Indian people who are pro-Israel, so I don't know, I guess he was one of them. Funny enough, he was actually in the same high school as me in Canada when I came over here. So yeah, that's how it was over there. And anytime, like I said, we would be going back and forth. When my dad had to change jobs, we had to go back to India, so we would get our family visas. So that was the time that I would utilize as much as possible to search more about the Jewish people, since we didn't, in the Middle Eastern countries, you have like a national filter almost, where you can't search Jewish topics as much. You can't search much about Israel. And so while I was there, I would, have all the time to search for these things. And I think the first time I saw a Jewish person actually in my life was 20 years ago. We had a trip to Europe. It was in Switzerland, and I remember seeing a chassid with payos crossing across the street, I think probably in Zurich or Geneva. And I was on the bus, and I literally wanted to go jump and ask him questions, but I was in the bus, I was a kid, my parents wouldn't allow, didn't have the independence. So like I said, it was, let's fast forward a little bit. It was about 5-6 years. So I was age 17, 18 when I moved to Calgary, Canada. And interestingly, some of my best friends in high school ended up being Israelis. Now, one of them, for me at least, he was Jewish. One of them was halachically Jewish, one was not. So the first person, Ophir Brown in Calgary, he was the first, like you can call it, the Israeli that I met, because halachically his dad was Jewish, mom was not. And I started to basically, even before I started to learn more about Judaism, it was more like I started to teach myself Hebrew. And I had this idea that I want to live in Israel, I want to go there, I want to learn the language perfectly. And Baruch Hashem, I'm successful now to quite an extent. So yeah, that's how it started when I was in Canada. I did 2 years of my high school in Canada, the last 2 years. After that, my dad actually changed his job again. He moved to Kuwait with the rest of my family. I was alone. I was in university. My parents were paying tuition, of course. And I was like, finally, I had the chance to make my own decisions for the first time. And the first thing I do is I search, I think right a week into university, I search synagogues in Calgary. And what appears, of course, I know there was a Frum Shul there, but what really appeared was Temple B'nai Tikva, with the Rabbi Howard Altman, the Reform Shul over there. So I go and I feel, I actually was very surprised. I was actually very taken aback by the Shabbat services. It was good music, good food and everything, but obviously you're playing musical instruments there, people are driving, men and women sitting together, but that time I didn't know much better. And that was, I would say, That's something that started about 11 years ago, 11, 10, 11 years ago. And Baruch Hashem, after some time, because based on my previous research when I was a child, I knew about certain things. I knew about Rosh Hashanah, fasting on Yom Kippur, Hanukkah, and Tefillin. It's very interesting. Particularly these few things that I knew. I didn't really know much about Shabbos, the Melachot, and a lot of the other things. But these things were there, and what always bothered me is why do the Reform not wear Tefillin? It was very interesting. And so I think it was the summer of 2014, about 10 years ago, I took a summer trip to Montreal, and I first walk into a frum shul, and a guy literally is out there, is like, "Did you put on tefillin yet? Are you Jewish?" I said, "Yeah, I'm Jewish," because by that time I had actually done a Reform conversion. You know, it wasn't even worth the paper that it was written on, but it was a conversion. And I said, "Yeah, I am." And he put on the tefillin on me, and I felt very special. I felt, wow, this is interesting. Why was I missing this from my regular service? And of course, I saw the shul. I saw a few other things. He talked about the rabbis, and I was always a spiritual person, kind of looking for spirituality, looking for meaning. And I did definitely see through the fact that the non-frum Jews, whether it was Reform or conservative, did not really provide that. So I started to look for the nearest frum place. At that time, I was searching a lot online. I saw a lot of rabbis online. For example, one of the biggest rabbis that had a big influence was Rabbi Yosef Mizrahi. So 10 years ago in the summer, I started to listen to his shiurim, and I made a decision. I have to go and get myself, number one, a Brit Milah, and try to find a community. So, by the time, I also on the side had made an Aliyah application using my Reform conversion, which is funny because they told me, Nefesh Benefesh, that it's perfectly fine. And I was duped into thinking that will work. And I thought that it's like grades. So there's the Reform, which is like a low grade, and then the Orthodox, which is high grade. I had no real knowledge of what is what is Giur Halacha in so many words. So then I decided to move to the closest community to Western Canada, because I was still not sure about moving over to Montreal or Toronto. So I moved over to Vancouver. It was the closest city to Calgary. And Baruch Hashem, I ended up in a pretty nice community there. It was initially with Chabad, a Litvish yeshiva called PTI, which I think has, if I'm not mistaken, I think also there were some people from there that went to Or Samech that I knew. That was like the beginning of my real Jewish education, because in PTI for a few months that I was there, not officially, but going and learning with the Bachurim, I actually heard about this true story of the Jewish people. By that time, I had also, by the way, done a Brit Milah medically at a Jewish clinic, and I felt that this is it. This is it. This is how I am now. I'm kind of Jewish now, because that conversion, whatever it was, now I can go to a higher standard and start learning myself. So unfortunately, instead of like how it's supposed to be done in a proper way, go and learn with a Beit Din, talk to the rabbis, I started learning most of the things by myself. And obviously when you do that, you sort of end up having your own hashkafa, in so many words, your own way of thinking. But I was able to learn for the first time about Avraham Avinu, Yitzhak Avinu, Yaakov Avinu, Moshe Rabbeinu, the whole 5 books of Moshe, the Chumash, books of Musar, Mesilat Yesharim. I was able to get a general, education. I think around Pesach of the year Tafshin Ayin Hey, right, 10 years ago, I got in touch with Rabbi Ilana Koka in Vancouver, and he started to actually take me under his wing and started to teach me, how to do a full conversion according to Sephardi Minhagim. But unfortunately, there was no Batei Din in Vancouver at that time. And I was very, very, very hesitant and very adamant to go and move to Israel, because I felt maybe Hashem is waiting for me to go there and do a full, proper conversion in Eretz Israel while I can get my Aliyah, my papers. And there was constant rejections at that time. and I didn't understand why. But Baruch Hashem, I think everything is for the right reason. I wasn't allowed to even enter the country twice in a row. I had my Indian passport. I don't understand what made them think that I was a security threat, because that's exactly what they told me at Nefesh B'Nefesh. So that's how it was. That's how it started. And but I guess this is what Hashem wanted. So facing these rejections and also not finding a proper community in Toronto or Montreal at that moment, I decided to actually move back to India for some time. That was 8 years ago. So I was there for about a year and a half. And one thing that helped me being in India was just that I blocked off all the other noises around me and all the other things that I had to do, and I just focused on learning Torah. I went there, technically speaking, to help my uncle in his business, and I was dejected. I felt that maybe just Hashem just wants me to be a Noahide and not a Jewish person. But while I was there, I ended up stumbling on Shurim of Rabbi Yaron Reuven, also another famous speaker, and he sort of helped me. He said, "Yeah, we'll help you with the conversion. Basically, you're welcome to learn with us and everything." And so I started to basically listen to as many Shurim as possible. I started to listen to his rabbi's Shurim in Hebrew and to do subtitling and translation for him. And I started with like a zero knowledge of Hebrew, and with Siyata Dishmaya, doing that translation during a lot of the free time that I had in India, I was able to get my Hebrew knowledge to a decent level. And so that's how it was. So, and after a year and a half, I decided it's time for me to move back, because I don't want to lose my status as a Canadian resident, permanent resident at that point, and move back to Toronto. By that time, my parents had also moved there. I mean, my mother and my brother. The only reason our parents were moving to Canada was not that they wanted to settle there, it's for our education. Now, so in the first move it was for me, and second move it was for my brother's higher education. Now, while I was there, I as quickly as possible, I just moved to the Jewish community over there in Toronto. Stayed and studied there, became a part of the shul actually in Thornhill. But I was not very comfortable initially, finishing a conversion with the Beit Din, even though I had a few meetings with them. I just wanted a place where I could live, like permanently there, and set my feet. So for about 3 years I was there. I was also sort of doing a few courses. Then after 3 years, there was a local rabbi that had invited Rabbi Mizrahi and Rabbi Yaron Reuven to Montreal, and I went to see their lectures, and I got in touch with him. His name is Rabbi Gad Ifra, and I decided, basically around COVID time, since I started working remotely at that point, that it's probably time for me to move to Montreal. So I made the move, Baruch Hashem, and I had the personal guidance of Rabbi Ifra at that point of time. So having a personal rabbi for the first time after Rabbi Akoka, and this time he directed me to a proper Beit Din, the Vad Ha'ir in Montreal. I did whatever I needed to learn, moved to a Jewish community, took all the, learned all the halachot that were needed to, and took upon myself Torah and mitzvot. And 2023, actually, 25th of Elul, which corresponds to 9/11/2023. I went to the mikveh as a non-Jew, and I came out as a different person, and that was the most special moment of my life. I felt it. That was it, and ever since then, Rabbi Gad Ifra has been had been pushing me to go to yeshiva in Or Sameach. And that was his, it was just that you need to go here in order to learn how to learn, in order to sharpen your skills. And I was adamant more on like going to an Israeli yeshiva, because I thought I knew Hebrew. He was like, no, you will feel very quickly how much, even if you know Hebrew perfectly, you will be a chutznik over there in Eretz Israel. Mm-hmm. And his words definitely proved to be quite right. So so for about a year I was just saving up money, thinking about what could be the right time to go, and and also preparing myself mentally for it. Trying to learn some Mishnayot, trying to get a little grasp of the Gemara. But I think there's no place like yeshiva. I'm here for the last 2 weeks now, Baruch Hashem, and really for the first time in my life, I feel like I'm learning something. I mean, aside from the halachot where I was learning with my rabbis back then, and if you want to ask me for my mission, it's to keep learning, keep the afochba the kulaba. Everything is in the Torah, and honestly, Hashem wills, I will continue learning as much as possible, whether I stay in the confines of the yeshiva or not, because it's depending on my status here. How quickly I get my visas, how quickly maybe I might even make aliyah. So based on all of those factors, I maybe might have to fly in and out of the country, but B'ezrat Hashem, I will continue. Like there are three things in life that you only get through Yisurin: Torah, Olam Haba, and Eretz Yisrael. So nothing's gonna come easy. I understand that, and B'ezrat Hashem, I just like Hashem helped me to understand the truth. I think it's all from Him that He will be able to help me to get to the right stages of my life. B'ezrat Hashem.
Can you quickly talk about your Brit Milah experience, hesitation?
Oh, yeah. So the Brit Milah I did 10 years ago, that was a clinical one. It was with local anesthetic, so I was definitely awake when when the operation was going on, and it was. I mean, what it says in the Torah is definitely true, that the third day pains the most, because the day after was fine, the second day was fine. The third and fourth days, yeah, I think getting used to it was probably the harder part than the pain initially, and the doctor did a good job, I think, but usually Bate Din, actually, I think in the past, and I think some Bate Din even today, refuse to convert anybody that does a Brit Milah sort of by himself, without consulting a Beit Din and rabbis. There are many reasons for that, because it's almost like the person is sort of doing it, Usually if a person does it himself, I know some converts who actually numbed themselves and did it themselves. And I mean, kol hakavod to them, but because you might mess up the procedure, you might have a very invalidated Brit Milah. But since the person was a Moel, he was Jewish, so by the time when I went to the mikveh, just before they did a Hatafat Dam Brit, they checked, and there was nothing wrong with the way the operation was done, the procedure was done. But obviously, since it was not done in Kedusha, they had to draw a drop of blood, and that's how it was. Yeah.
And any experiences you could share about working for B'ezrat Hashem?
Oh yes, absolutely. So I was working about 4 years for BezratHashem.org, which is the organization of Rabbi Yaron Reuven. During COVID, I kind of, it was more, I was continuing to work for a digital marketing company from home, but it just proved to be not working. And the boss, who lives now currently in Netanya, I'm still in touch with him. He moved back to Israel. And right around that time, I just reached out to Rabbi Yaron Reuven, and I said, you know what, I would love to work in places that are where I feel the kedusha, and rather than in a corporate setting. And he said that I think that would be a great idea to be on board, and that's what I did. I started to work remotely. That allowed me, of course, the ability to move from Toronto to Montreal and to finish my conversion. And I was initially planning to continue doing that on the side while I'm in yeshiva. But I think eventually what happened is that there is a point where it's sort of not making ends meet. So it was his suggestion itself that maybe I should go and start working for another firm. So I started to. The moment I left B'siyata Dishmaya, I got an opportunity for a very religious person, David Sesportas in Montreal, who has an electrical engineering firm, to start learning AutoCAD for him and working with him. So that's where I sort of started to work for the last few months, basically, right before coming here.
What is learning been like here in Center and Gemara Shir?
Oh yeah, it's like I said, first time in my life that I believe I'm really learning something. You know, I used to go in Montreal to Rabbi Kalevsky, who also has, by the way, incidentally, a place called Or Sameach Montreal, and he has the best Gemara Shiur in town too. So I'm guessing the franchise has a great name across the board. And I tried to try to learn something over there, but since I had to balance work, I had to balance also learning halacha shiurim with that I was kovea with Rabbi Ifra and other rabbis. I barely got any chances to because they would always clash. So whatever chance I got to learn, it was okay, but it was still kind of confusing because he was at a pretty high level at that point of time, and but I did sort of like do chavruta whenever I lived in an area in Devimi in Montreal where a lot of bachurim would be either in Israel or in Lakewood or other places in the U.S. and they would always come for for the Ben Azmanim and for the Chagim, and whatever little bit that I could get from them I got. So that was my base in Gemara, let's say. But now I definitely feel that I'm getting somewhere, and I'm just here for 2 weeks, so let's see how it goes.
We wish you a lot of success, and thank you for sharing your story. Hopefully it inspires others out there who are watching.
B'ezrat Hashem, B'ezrat Hashem. If anybody wants to have a bit more, I would say, if people understand Yiddish, I just had completed an interview in a magazine called Kinderstiebel, it's a Belz Hasidim. I think it's based out of Borough Park. And it was for their Shavuot edition, so it's a bit more longer version of events. So if anybody's interested, anybody understands Yiddish, they can probably try to subscribe to that issue. Yeah.
Can they Google that?
I don't know, but they can contact a rabbi by the name of Rabbi David Weber. I don't have his contact right now, but it's a famous magazine. If you can contact their editor, I'm sure they can get to the guy that interviewed me. That's about a few months back.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible. And by the way, what was your family's reaction?
Oh, that's a very interesting one. It's a good question. So, my family was very, how do I say it? They're very nationalist, very traditionalist type of people, and they viewed Israel very positively. A lot of the Hindu nationalists in India are very pro-Israel. I would say even in some cases even more pro-Israel than the pro-Israel voices in the U.S. It's like an emotional attachment, feeling that they are suffering the same situation that Israel is suffering, but on a much bigger scale. And if you've heard about this, the incidents that they've had with Pakistan, Kashmir, and all the other regions. Israel has provided India with weapons when nobody in the world wanted to provide them. There was sanctions on the country, and they have hakarat tov for that. They actually do. I feel that people genuinely have hakarat tov over there. But again, it's all coming down to the fact that how they view Israel rather than really the Jewish people. Like I said, there's not that much of a knowledge about the Jews in India. My parents were definitely ambivalent because they were like, on one hand, they were not anti-Semitic, but on the other hand, they were like, why are you leaving our derech? Like, we invested in you not to become something else. So there was a lot of debates till the day of my conversion, but literally the day I came out of the mikveh, I didn't know what the reaction was going to be. And honestly, frankly, I don't care. I don't care about anybody's reaction. Like I said, I was, I hold on to my viewpoints very strongly, and I just, I messaged both my parents, and my mother was like, "Oh wow, I'm so happy for you. I'm glad that you got what you wanted." Even just recently, when I told her that I'm in Eretz Yisrael, everything is fine, everything is good, she's like, "I'm very glad for you. Maybe we'd like to come and see Eretz Yisrael one day." And my dad was the most interesting reaction was from my dad when he said, "May Hashem continue to bless you." So, and I had some very, very how do I say, very scarring debates with my dad before that. But it's almost like when Hashem wants you to go in a certain way, he puts a resistance, and when you overcome that resistance, you realize everything was from Hashem.
This question, if you don't want to answer it, a lot of people wonder, about after and during marriage, if converts from certain specific their home countries
Yeah.
have a preference to marry converts from their home countries or not specifically.
I mean, that's a very that's an interesting question. I have seen converts back in Montreal, from the little that I know, that they have married into Jewish families, and those that have married into those people that are from a similar ethnic background. So I think it is really a personal preference. For me, it doesn't matter. I could care less as long as the person is somebody that's Yireh Shamayim, wants to keep the Torah, and wants to have the same kind of hashkafa as me. It really doesn't matter. But yeah, I would say it's more whatever people are comfortable with, that's it.
Okay, again, thank you so much, and wishing you Gemar Chatima Tova and success with the rest of your journey.
Thank you. Gemar Chatima Tova.
All right.
Perfect. See ya.
Take care.